Colin, give us the wrap. How do you wrap up PlayStation's E3?
Oh, they very easily won.
Now, you say that they easily won E3, which I totally agree with. Do you think if Microsoft had done everything perfectly, that they still would have won? Because I still feel like they would have. Like, I think even with the used games aside, even with, like, their console being $100 more, if they were like, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, I think just the way, and you guys obviously talked about their conference and stuff like that, but I think that their personas this time around were just something so much more approachable, so much more like...
You're asking a couple different things here.
Right.
I think if we removed used games and the $100 difference in price and then the Rockstar moment of everything Microsoft does or won't do, we will do.
Yep.
If you remove that, I think they lose.
Really?
I thought that Microsoft's conference it was like a bunch of awesome games. They were really, really cool games, and I loved that. And then it finished, and then when we went into PlayStation, the story I keep telling, right, is that it was an hour of the PlayStation conference, and they called us back to the live stream table to be ready in case they bump out at any time. And so Damon and I sat down and talked for the first time, and I was like, this is a good showing, but like it's not super exciting, right? Like, because it was. Here's more Knack, and here's more Killzone, and here's more Infamous, which was all great, but it wasn't like a new announcement. It wasn't anything crazy.
Right.
They had the order tossed in there. But then, like literally as I said that, they came on stage and were like, let's talk about what the other guys are doing versus us.
And they had their like classic 1980s WWF moment.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Andre the Giant. But I talked to, I think I mentioned this in last week's podcast, but even expounded about it a little more. That you're talking about personas and stuff.
Yeah.
I totally, what I told people after the conference, when I talked to Shuhei about, was like, I think Beyond fans know Shu from our show, and then they go follow him on Twitter, EOSP, and they see the way he interacts with other people and how
he's
joking and awesome he is.
Yeah, genuinely nice dude.
And this conference, I really felt was PlayStation as a brand adopting that.
Yeah.
And being like, hey, here's a photo of me with the podcast Beyond Kids.
Yeah.
And here's, the other guys suck, and we're doing this, and we're $100 cheaper, and no DRM, and what I mean? Like, that was totally them, giving the metaphorical finger, right? Of being like, well,
I read this article somebody wrote that this is how bad I am, but they were like about the Microsoft conference. They said you're not wrong, you're just. And I was like, that really nails it, because they just came off as just like, hey guys, like a bunch of these like kind of rich white 80s 90s like sort of retired coke addict guys who are like, hey, we're just gonna these kids will play any of these games. Pay up. And Sony was just like, hey, we just really want to hang out with you and just do fun stuff. Like, I know that you guys like TV and you like movies, and you'll still be able to do that, but you guys want to play video games, right? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, well, here's how you're going to do that for cheap.
We talked about this after the February event, that this really is, I think, the reading between the lines of, hey, we up with the PS3.
Oh, yeah.
We're not going to do that again, and we're sorry. It's almost one of those, like, sorry we've been gone for so long. Yeah. Sorry we lost ourselves in that. And it's that, I think Colin mentioned it before, like, the hubris of that second console doing so well. It does so well that you come out for the third, and you're like, I can do anything.
Well, you're seeing a very similar hubris now at Microsoft, and the fact of the matter is it probably already happened, but PS3 will outsell Xbox 360 worldwide, but we're within our... And they'll do that being on the market a year less time. The numbers are negligible now, so PS3 is technically already outselling 360, but we live in the North American bubble where since PS3 Slim came out, so since like late 2009, Xbox has outsold PS3 pretty handily every single month since then. So we live in this bubble where like Microsoft dominates with the Xbox, and the same is true in the UK, although not mainland Europe. And I think what we're seeing now is like the third console curse is like kind of real. When you think about it, it's like the NES and the SNES were great, and then the N64 came out and they had a lot of trouble, and the PlayStation 1 and PS2 were great, and the PS3 came out and they had trouble, and the Nexus and the Genesis to the Saturn.
These things they don't come down to like, oh man, the games weren't there, or this wasn't there. Like the N64 had great games, like the PS3 had great games. It's all about the cockiness that those guys had going into. Like Nintendo were like, oh, we're not going to partner with Sony and make discs. That's crazy. That would be cheap for everyone and fun. You could fit 80-hour games with CD quality music. Now we're going to make cartridges. We're going to charge $85 for them. We're going to sell publishers the same cartridges for $65, $70. They make basically nickels off of every game and screw over everyone. Screw over all the third parties, burn bridges. And Microsoft did that this time around, where they're just sort of like, we're going to do our own thing, and you want to connect, and we're like, no, we don't. you want to do all this. You want a system that's always online. Then there was the article about the military, basically.
Yeah, I saw that. That was crazy.
That have people in the military cannot play the Xbox One, and these are the guys that in between everything
protecting
they're
us.
protecting us. They're like, I'm going to play some video games, and like they need it to be offline. You know, they play local multiplayer shooters, and they can't do that. So
yeah, that was crazy. When I saw that article, I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like the military brass is like, well, this console's not for our people because you can't play in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever. Soon to be Syria, I'm sure. So I'm really interested in how Microsoft responds now because they're on their back foot now for the first time since 2005.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think people are ignoring is, the order looks really cool. We don't really know anything about it yet. I did a pretty extensive interview, actually, you can read on IGN, but with the guy that made the game. But we knew about a lot of these games, and I got to play a lot of the games, and it was cool. But I think the games being shown at Microsoft's conference were actually better, the exclusives. And I think a lot of that's lost, like Titanfall and Sunset Overdrive and Dead Rising 3 look dope.
They didn't show much of it, but I got to sit down and interview the guys behind Quantum Break, Remedy, and stuff.
Yeah, Quantum Break.
If they pull off what they're talking about, holy shit, that sounds awesome. That sounds amazing.
Well, they're a great studio, so...
I actually thought Dead Rising 3 was a mess.
Really? I think
did you play it or just the demo?
Just the demo.
Yeah. See, like my thing was I only watched the demo, and for me they were like, "It's the zombie MMO you've always wanted." I'm like, "Yes, I have." And then it looked like there were a million zombies on screen. It looked really dire. And then of course they did the goofy weapons. I was like, "No, don't do that. Don't do that."
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's sort of trapped in two worlds, right? And I know we're on a PlayStation podcast talking about an Xbox exclusive.
We're on a conversational podcast, and we talk about whatever we want, Brian. Don't you worry.
Yeah, suck it. But to me, it was like maybe call that a new franchise. Don't call that Dead Rising, because to me, Dead Rising is what it is, or has certain connotations to it, and they're like 1 foot in Goofy Land and 1 foot in
Goofy Land.
Yeah, that's the story of my life.
That's your next album.
Yeah, it was the same thing where it's like the guy's running around, it's gritty and realistic, and all of a sudden, no, my gun broke, and it just explodes in the air, and he does it with his arms up, and it's...
I don't know. I think Dead Rising 2 was like really bad.
Yeah, it was.
So it was cool for like that game sucks. So it was like really cool that like Dead Rising 3 it seemed more fluid and more open ended. It's not like a mall. It's like a world that you get to explore, which I think is kind of cool because there's something really cool about that franchise that they never took advantage of.
Yeah.
That's an Inafune game back in the day. So I mean, there's not surprising that with Onimusha and Mega Man and all these other things he's done, like he hits home runs, but. When he got his hands off of it, much like I think Lost Planet, it's a very similar story or whatever. I think it kind of lost its soul a little bit, and but I think a lot of I think Ted Price being on stage at the Microsoft conference was like a huge moment. Might have picked the wrong horse at the wrong time after sticking with Sony for such bad times.
Well, they're still with Sony.
Yeah.
They're just expanding their portfolio.
It's cool.
I know, I'm just driving home for somebody who's listening.
And for people that don't know, Sunset Overdrive is being largely driven by the guys that did Resistance. So this is their best team, and so there's a lot of reason to be excited about.
Explains why they look so similar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This was. Yeah, I talked to those guys. I went out to dinner with some of the guys from Insomniac when I was at E3, and they're really really excited about that game.
Yeah. Trailer looks cool.
Yeah, I think that it's very stylish and stuff like that. But yeah, with PS, like my only disappointment with the PlayStation conference was like a real lack of. First of all, I expected that they were going to announce one more big PS3 game, and I thought it would be Uncharted.
Big PS3.
Yeah, like I thought that they would be like, we have one more. God of War 2 is a good a good analog to that. God of War 2 came out a year after PS3 came out. You know, and that was a PS2 game, and it sold huge numbers. And I was expecting that maybe Uncharted or something was going to be a PS3 game.
Well, I mean, you say that, but you figure there's still Gran Turismo, and there's still Beyond Two Souls. Like, it's not like they don't have these games.
There was also
mindshare.
The Last of Us, which to me is like, and The Last of Us. You talk about Sony's booth at E3. They had 20 kiosks set up to play The Last of Us there, and people were lined up. Even though it was out 2 days after the show, people were like, "I got to play this now."
Yeah, they made a good choice.
And to me, that's the sort of the console swan song.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world. Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.